What do I do?
Welcome to Fan4Racing Radio. We're here tonight for our Hot Topic Sound Off conversation with our crew here. We have a guest tonight. We'll start with him. Chris Crichton, welcome to the show.
Well, yeah, it's kind of a welcome back.
Yes, it is. A homecoming, if you will.
Yeah, kind of. So a little backstory about 10, 11 years ago. I was an aspiring podcaster, and Miss Sharon brought me on to the show.
Okay. We're getting some feedback there.
And I met who would I eventually work with over at 110 Nation, Steve Billmeyer.
Yes, I remember Steve Billmeyer.
Okay. Did we lose you?
Yeah, we're having a problem. For some reason, there's feedback from the microphone.
Was that?
Yeah, we didn't hear a lot of what you were saying there. So I'll come back to you. Sometimes there's a bounce back off of the microphone on the computer. So let me go to Jay and see if you can work that out. But we'll come back to you, Chris. We also have with us tonight the big mouth from the Mid-South, Jay Huseman.
All right, thank you, Sharon. I know it's been a couple hours since I talked to you, but Chris, I don't know if if you got wireless headsets. It's almost like the connection with the wireless headsets is what's not working. But let me tell you, if I had a House of Hook hat, I'd have it on for you, Chris. I haven't been down there to see you, but I know y'all got rained out for your first race. But hopefully, get to see you again in person real soon.
Okay, let's try this again, Chris. Chris Crichton, we talked about this being a homecoming for you because you used to be on with us.
Right. Yes. So, about 11 years ago, is there still an echo? Are we good?
No, we're good.
No, it's good now.
Oh, right. All right. Good deal. So, yeah, about 11 years ago, Miss Sharon reached out. We knew some people who knew some people, and she brought me on the show. And I met Steve Billmeyer. I jumped over with him over at 110. And for the last 11 years, I've done a podcast this year with the Blog Talk Radio going away. We haven't gotten the necessary funds and stuff to continue the show. So I've actually been, kind of bummed. No podcast this year so far. But it's great to be back on here. It's a kind of a homecoming. It's great to put a face to the people that I'll be talking to. We've come a long way in 10 years, have we not, Miss Sharon?
We have. We've come quite a long ways. And I remember you coming on as the yellow caution flag.
Yeah, we still go by that. My son, come here, dip in here real quick. This is that one-eye kid. He's the future of Yellow Caution Flag. He's the one.
Oh, okay.
He does. He's doing streaming and stuff, working for Hunt the Front and Crate Racing USA, and just kind of. It's amazing to pass this down to the offsprings there, and he's doing a really good job.
To the next generation.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've got a whole list of hot topics. I don't know if you saw it on
yes, I got
our page or not, but I'll have Jay kind of start us out, and then we'll do a roundabout here.
Okay.
Well, I got to tell you what, everybody I heard today on Sirius XM talking about it said they saw a first. Christopher Bell makes a pit stop, and he was trying to go for 4 in a row, which would have been a record. Instead, he set a different one. Had a loose wheel and got out of his pit stop, and Adam Stevens said, find a box, find a box, find a box, and he pitted in a teammate's box to tighten that lug nut up. Now, NASCAR did penalize him, tail end of the longest line, because he pitted outside of his box. But he saved a 2-lap penalty and possibly losing a tire.
Okay, Chris, any thoughts there?
Yeah, man. I mean, I watched a little bit of Door Bumper Clear earlier today and listened to it, and they said that, Freddie Kraft said that this was a strategy, right? That it was something that they had in their back pocket. It was innovative. They waited for the right time for it to fall into place. For that necessary thing to happen, everything's got to line up, right? So the car has to be leaving pit road, or there has to be an open pit stop, open pit box. So, it wasn't something that you could play right away, but just the innovative thinking, man. I mean, it saved 2 laps. It saved their tire changers from getting kicked off the team for a couple of weeks. So, man, strategy is the name of the game in racing, Michael. I know you see it all the time as well as we do. A lot of times races are won or at least survived by right here. So
one thing I learned from my experience in the business world is you always got to have a backup plan. You got to anticipate every possible scenario and have a backup plan for that scenario. So that's what these guys did. And you got to give them kudos for that, because as Jay mentioned, it saved them quite a bit of penalty that would have been much worse than the penalty they had going back to the end of the longest line. So I give them a lot of kudos for that. It was quick thinking on the part of the crew chief. He knew what to do because they had that backup plan. And you're right, I've not seen that before. So it was pretty cool to see it play out in action. And I wouldn't mind seeing that again if it came down to it. Jay, what were your thoughts? Uh-oh, we lost your sound, Jay.
Yeah, I see that. I'm with y'all. Adam Stevens, you got to give it to him, Sharon. I don't know if I've referenced it this year, but I know I have in the past. Frankie Stoddard at the All-Star race when he called to pit Jeff Burton when everybody thought he was going to be disqualified. Quick thinking, it worked. They accepted the penalty that comes with it. Now, with that, as we tend to see, though, I think NASCAR may make a new rule or change the rule as far as that. To me, it is a little unfair. Great on them. They did what they had to do. However, not everybody's got a teammate, so it's a little unfair. Had it been where they pitted further down pit road, they wouldn't even have that option. Chris mentioned it. The way it worked out was just unbelievable, because had they been a pit stall or 2 down, they might not have had the time and ability to do it. Whether or not NASCAR feels it's fair, and I think of it in football when you the intentional grounding rule. You avoiding a sack and a big penalty. You try and do something to avoid it and take a smaller penalty. I get the feeling NASCAR is going to be like, hey, great job. You got one over on us, but don't do it again.
yeah.
But go ahead, Chris. I'm
I
biting at the bit, but go ahead. I want to hear your thoughts.
I completely agree with Michael. I was hoping I was going to be able to say that myself, because NASCAR, they act, right, and they react. And most of the time when you pull the wool, they're quick to react to make sure that you can't do it. The Wall Mary, whatever it's called, with Ross Chastain. I mean, they immediately were proactive on making sure that doesn't ever happen again. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely some anytime you try to undermine them, they're probably quick on the trigger to make sure you can't do that again.
Boy, I hate to be the one to disagree here, but I'm going to be the one to disagree on this one, because if you recall, the reason that he stopped is they didn't get the tire on. So
Right.
To make him go back out onto the track with that tire not secured, I think would be a terrible mistake. And thank goodness he was able to pull in and get that tire secured so that he could go back out onto the track safely and securely. So to me, for them to make a rule to say you can't do something like that, I think is a dire mistake.
Wow.
Now they might need to say maybe they have to pull into the garage area or something like that. But there's no crew members back there, so that's going to be a penalty in and of itself if they have to go back there. But because the crew's going to have to make a mad dash. And I don't know. I think the way it happened was about the best scenario you could hope for. And yeah, they gave him a penalty and he started at the end of the longest line. But that's a safety issue. You can't let him go back out on that track with an unsecured wheel.
I like that. That right there opened us up to something that I don't believe either one of us were thinking about, Michael.
Well, no, I do. I understand from the safety point of it. You're right. They might not want to make that rule of going back out. But again, we've seen it where cars have to back up and go back to their own pit stop. And if you noticed, it almost caused some problems as he was trying to cut across pit lane just to get to that other pit box, which there again was kind of a safety issue because he was trying to pit in a box. Nobody was expecting him, obviously, to include possibly that pit crew. I don't know when they got word that he was coming to Chase Briscoe's pit. But they might need to change that rule of, taking equipment out of the box or pitting just over the line is this penalty. If you're pitting in somebody else's box like that to avoid the tire, yeah, good on you for safety, but we're still going to enforce the penalty as if the tire were going to have come off based off of that. Because like I said, from a, what's the word here, fairness standpoint, like I said, if you don't have a teammate or, you don't have that option available, it's really not fair. And NASCAR is about being fair and everybody having the same options to do things for the most part. I understand it was a great strategy. And like I said, I think that it's one of those where they'll say, hey, you did good. This is now known as the, Christopher Bell, Adam Stevens rule. They didn't label that the Frankie Stoddard rule, but everybody knew that's what it was. So, and I think Ray Abraham is credited with multiple rules as well as Chad Canals. So I do think that they probably will address it and say, hey, don't do that again. If you got to back up or stop and wait on pit road, do that. I'm with you, Sharon. I understand. You're right. Safety-wise, you don't want to force them out onto the track and force them to lose the wheel on the track. But I don't think they're going to like the fact that they did that and took a lesser penalty either.
I hear you. Okay, Chris, your turn to sound off.
Yeah, I bet definitely. No telling what the penalty will be now, right? They're going to definitely probably look into that and at least create some kind of disadvantage, or maybe they have to come back through pit to come back around one more time or something like that. I'm not sure what the penalty will be. And to stay on Sharon's behalf, like I agree totally. Like there is a safety issue behind that, and they should. Even if it's not their team member, if they know something's wrong, they should, park it immediately to get that fixed because, we've seen tires come off and we know firsthand the damages that can do not only to pit crew members, but fans or officials or anything. So, yeah. And I'm for whatever NASCAR comes up with. Look, that's the way this game goes. These guys, they make these millions of dollars to outsmart you, and so if NASCAR has to tie something up just because they got outsmarted one weekend, no doubt it'll be just another rule added to the book.
Yeah, the couple of points here. You always got to be prepared is one thing, but the first thing is not to make that mistake to begin with. And We've seen a lot of that lately where they didn't get a lug nut on tight enough and the guys are out there on the track, they got to come back in and get that lug nut tightened up. So if you look at it from the bottom line, I guess they've got to get the lug nuts on there better to begin with. And sometimes what's that saying? A penny saved is a penny earned.
Yeah.
If they can save, use that time wisely and get that lug nut on there correctly, it takes all the issue away to begin with. So that's one point. And I think that's what NASCAR's got to address with the drivers, because to me, it's been happening way too often. And we saw a lot of tire issues at Las Vegas. That's one tire issue we don't need. I think one of the worst ones was when we saw the complete rim come off of the car of Kyle Busch and roll around on the track. And in the area there, that's a safety issue. So they've got to address that, number one, and get that fixed where they get these lug nuts on securely. They went to one lug nut for that reason. They didn't want to have to deal with 5 lug nuts, so they gave them one lug nut. Get the one lug nut on right. So, and I know it's not that simple. I know that there are a lot of factors that go into why they don't get those lug nuts on correctly, but it's enough of a safety issue that first and foremost, they've got to look at that. And then secondly, if it does happen, they can't let that car go back out onto the track. So maybe that driver has to maybe wait, pull over, and at the end of pit road, wait until, not at the end of pit road, but maybe even in the garage area, pull over into the garage entrance or whatever, wait until everybody's off pit road, and then have the ability to be able to back up and go back in there. That's going to be a penalty in and of itself. I don't know what NASCAR's going to come up with, but I will say this is one of those times I'm glad it's them and not me, because they will look at it from all angles and they will come up with a good solution, as you said, Chris, because one thing that we say here all the time on Fan4Racing Radio is this is an evolution. NASCAR is never going to be done evolving as a sport. They are constantly evolving based on things like this that come up all the time. So it is something that they're going to have to take a look at. And you know what? The answer that they come up with may be a great solution to the problem. It may create other problems. So we'll have to see how that evolves and see how it progresses after they sit down and take a look at it. But they are very smart people, and I know they're going to put safety first and foremost with whatever solution they come up with. Jay?
Yeah, and I'm not trying to give them any ideas. You know, I'm not necessarily a fan of more rules and penalties by any means, but I do think it is, like I said, something of a little unfair because not everybody had to have that opportunity. Even that team, I mean, like I said, had they been pitted 3 or 4 stalls down, anybody in the first 5 pit stalls doesn't even have that opportunity. So for a team to have that option just because they're pitted further down, it may be that they say, okay, if you pit in somebody else's, another team's box, it's a 1-lap penalty or the 2-lap in-race penalty, but not the crew suspensions because it didn't come off out on the track. But like I said, I do see them addressing it one way or another and saying we really don't like that. Good job on you, but as Chris mentioned, the Hail Melon, they said, hey, that was cool. It gained a lot of popularity. Everybody's watching us, but we don't like it, and we're not going to let you do it again, period, point blank.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, it gives us something to look forward to, what NASCAR comes up with on this, and we'll see where they fall out. Chris, you want to pick the next topic?
Yeah, I would like to finish with saying this, on the last topic, I wish I'd come up with it a minute ago, but, I learned from the late James Murphy, it's not what's in the rule book, it's what's that's not in the rule book. So as long as they continue to do that, the sport will always be interesting.
I'll add another one to that before we go to the next hot topic. The rules are made for those people who know how to break them.
There you go. There you go.
You know what I'm saying? It's not for the majority of the people. It's for the one that does something that creates that rule.
That's right. It's the gray area.
Yep.
So I'm to pick a topic from the list over here. Is that
yes?
Okay. Well, let's jump right off into. I've got a lawsuit against NASCAR for $500. Response to countersuit filed by NASCAR.
All right. It's going to get juicy here. Okay, Jay.
Oh, you're gonna turn it. You're gonna turn it right over to me, Chris. You haven't.
You first.
Yeah, Chris. I don't know if your boy's still in the room. You may have to ask him to leave because this is one of those. Sharon knows I have to restrain myself. This is getting even more ridiculous, and it doesn't surprise me it did. Both sides are now accusing it of getting personal because they've made some personal levies against individual people, not just the situation. And any lawsuit, I mean, that's the way it was going to go. I don't know how they expected it any different. NASCAR's response was against, and I want to say his name was, is it Chris Polk? Is that
Chris Polk?
Curtis. No,
Curtis
yeah.
Polk.
There we go, Curtis. To point it out. Yeah, I know. That's why I was like, that don't sound right. But that's where NASCAR pointed the finger of kind of a driving force. And then 2311 returned of, hey, don't make it personal. But as NASCAR responded to that, you named Jim France in your initial lawsuit. So you made it personal to start with. All of this is just, in my opinion, absolutely ridiculous. I know, Sharon, you mentioned it. NASCAR has already said, hey, depending on how this goes, we may do away with the charter system. And I don't blame them. That wasn't in existence a few years back. And for them to then have a complaint with it, I understand. They negotiated. They didn't get everything they wanted, but they're trying to take their ball and go home or, have their cake and eat it too. I'm on the side of NASCAR in this case, almost 100%. I'm not saying teams shouldn't have an avenue, but they did. They had 2 years worth of negotiating. And if you choose not to sign said agreement to not work with this company, because that's what it is. NASCAR is a company. It is a business. Other teams weren't 100% happy with everything they got, but it was enough. And they said, this is where we got to be. We want to race. We got teams and employees we want to protect. We're going to do so. 2311 to me said, no, we're not signing it. Our teams, we'll take care of our teams. Don't worry about it. But then said, hey, NASCAR, you got to let us be a charter anyway, even though we didn't agree to and sign that deal. I'm gonna go ahead and hit my own mute button and let y'all, because this is getting ugly and I'm getting unhappy.
Yeah, we do try to keep this kid friendly because I know I've got grandkids that are subscribed and listen, so I've got to keep it kid friendly. But I'm kind of with Jay on this. I think that NASCAR gave all the teams a chance to negotiate with them. They did group meetings. They did one-on-one meetings for people who had particulars that they wanted to go through. They did that with 2311 on numerous occasions. And after 2 years of a negotiation, yes, in September, when the playoffs were beginning, they gave agreement, the contract, and redlined the things that had most recently been discussed and said, read the red line items and we need it signed by midnight tonight. So it wasn't like they gave them the whole contract at that time and said, read the whole contract and have it ready at midnight tonight. It was a few red line items that they were to review because everything else had been agreed to, according to what we're hearing. So 13 teams signed the agreement. 2 teams held out. We know that there are some teams that felt that they had a responsibility to their teams and their organization and went ahead and signed it. Some people said that it exactly what they wanted, but it was better than anything that they'd ever had before. And so they felt that they would go ahead and sign it. 2311 and Front Row Motorsports, on the other hand, didn't sign it. And by not signing it, they were waiving their chance at having a charter for the upcoming year. And that, to me, is it. If you decide not to sign it, you knew what was going to happen if you didn't sign it. So you don't get a charter for the upcoming year. Now, I know whenever you're negotiating anything, there is a little bit of give and take. And both parties typically walk away from the agreement not getting everything that they wanted because there was a compromise that takes place. So that's what happened in this case. Everybody didn't get what they wanted, but I heard a figure of 49% of the media rights, and I know that's not the issue here. That's a pretty good share of the media rights deal that's going back to the teams. So I just don't understand the lawsuit from 2311 and Front Row Motorsports. They say that the reason they wanted the charter back is because it was going to hurt them financially. At the same time that they're opening up their new airspeed facility that is state of the art. And I don't see how they're being hurt financially. I know part of it is because Tyler Reddick or some of the other charters wouldn't be guaranteed a starting spot, and they could end up losing their drivers. So I know that's part of it. I get that part of it. But I don't think there's so many drivers out there that are looking for a ride. They could have picked up other drivers. But that was the choice that they made when they decided not to sign the charter agreement. So I disagree with the injunction that gave them that ability to run as a charter. And I don't blame NASCAR for filing the countersuit because of it. I am interested in knowing how this countersuit goes because I think NASCAR does have a very strong argument. And I feel bad for the organization. And by that, I mean the people that work there, the people that would be affected by it, the drivers and such. But you can't blame NASCAR for it. You need to blame the people at the helm of your organization, not NASCAR, because they negotiated for 2 full years. And if they didn't get a chance to have their grievances heard, that was on them because NASCAR had the door open for those discussions. So I will be anxious to see how the countersuit goes. Chris, I'm anxious to hear your thoughts.
Man, oh man. I mean, y'all got me stirred over here because, first of all, this is a union versus free employment, right? Mm-hmm. And in most sports, there is a union that protects certain guidelines, certain issues. Curtis Polk, Michael Jordan, of course, are from the basketball arena. They're from the culture there where they do have certain protections in line with the union. If you'll remember a guy that I can't remember his name, maybe Kaufman, that worked for Michael Waltrip Racing, he formed this RTA, right? Mm-hmm. And this Racetrack Alliance team was supposed to be, kind of the beginning of a union. Well, I don't think that this lawsuit would be here today if the RTA hadn't decided to start meeting privately amongst teams with NASCAR. So you had Hendrick go and speak privately to NASCAR. They told NASCAR what they wanted for the charter agreement, and then they went to Gibbs, and Gibbs said what he wanted. Obviously, Trackhouse wanted the Project 91 car to have a free entry in the Daytona 500. I mean, that's you tell me where that deal come from, right? That was an intersect between NASCAR and Trackhouse. So, if the RTA had done their job and not separated themselves, I don't think this lawsuit would have happened, because no one would have signed the agreements. And you've got to look at who packed the punch here. You've got Joe Gibbs, Penske, and Hendrick Motorsports. Those three organizations, they've been here. They're not going anywhere, right? I would say Joe Gibbs Racing could possibly be gone in the future, and there's a lot of reasons why. They're having similar issues that we've seen with Roush, with long-term sponsorships going away, similar to Stewart Haas Racing. There's some things going on at Joe Gibbs that really keep me questioning. Maybe they're the next rain to fall. But let's get back to the topic. So, with Joe Gibbs and them going to the table outside of the RTA, that created this, this nonsense. You had Richard Childress, who said, look, I was basically forced to sign this. I didn't agree with everything, but it was on the table. I've got sponsors. I had to sign it. Michael Jordan's team, Front Row Motorsports, they did what nobody else would do. This countersuit, I feel like, is a desperate attempt to win something, because NASCAR must feel, and y'all can disagree with this if you want to, they must feel a little frightened with it, right? I mean, the guy who has brought this lawsuit aboard, he's gotten free agency in college football. He got, this guy's been behind a whole lot of antitrust lawsuits and has won at them. NASCAR seems to have lost the first two stages of this lawsuit. Definitely the first one, with the teams getting the extension on the charters, right? The NASCAR did not want any part of that, but here we are. So, I think it's kind of silly, but it's part of the process. The countersuit to 2311, they are naming names. And look, I spent all last year saying Jim France should no longer be heading this ship. He is too old and too out of control. He's trying to make this into the image of the sports car series that he owns. And we know this by the car, the type of car, where the number sits on the car. All this stuff has been things that he implemented in his other series that he's now brought to NASCAR. It's time for the next generation of Lisa Kennedy and Ben Kennedy to take the reins here. And hopefully, with the outcome of this lawsuit, we may see some leadership changes. Look, we all figured Brian France probably was not the guy who needed to be leading NASCAR. And Jim was a great fit in, because he was business and he was structured. But we didn't ever expect Jim France to hold the reins here for the next 2 decades, did we? I mean, he's already aged himself out. I think if we're going to appeal to younger fans, we need the younger generation. If that means our sharing process to these smaller teams so that they can compete against a Hendrick and a Joe Gibbs Racing, who are allowed 4 charters now, 4 charters, where every other team is only allowed 3. How is that fair? With 4 charters, you have 4 sponsorship opportunities, one more than what any of these other guys have, and that's up to $25 to $40 million a year going into these enterprises. How are you going to beat Hendrick when all Mr. Hendrick's got to do is call Spire Motorsports and grab his 2 front tire changers and put them over on Kyle Larson's team? Spire's not going to compete against Hendrick. They're a second-tier team, and I think that Michael Jordan's seen, I'm never going to be better than Joe Gibbs under this type of policy that NASCAR has. And can y'all argue that? I'll pass the baton.
Okay, Jay.
Well, this is a great example of having a guest on and maybe disagreeing. Yes. We're still friends, but just having a different viewpoint. So appreciate it, Chris. No, I don't necessarily agree. You got some points in there, I understand, but go back to the original NASCAR team of Bill France, Big Bill France. When there was talk of union and, drivers rebelling, he said, y'all pack your stuff and go. I'll go get some other drivers. We have seen that. NASCAR allowed the formation of the RTA, and they worked with them. From what I know anyway, of what I can read online and not get too pissed off and shut the computer down, but the teams had 8 items that they had an issue with, and they got their way on 7 of the 8. The only one they didn't actually check the box, other than more money, which, as Sharon pointed out, they got almost 50% of the TV media rights, was the guaranteed of lifetime charters. And that's where NASCAR drew a hard line and said, no, we're not giving that. You think about it, Chris, I know I don't know where you rank with working with Rodney there at the House of Hook at Meridian, or at Why Not Motorsports Park. But at the beginning of the season, you set rules and you say, if you want to run here, these are the rules, point blank. You don't follow them or you cause a problem, we're going to black flag you. We're going to kick you out for a week. If you does it again, we're going to kick you out for the season. I'm not going to go to names, but there are some drivers I think that are out for a long time, or permanently, because you just won't conform. You keep fighting the system. There's 30 some other drivers that, I said I wasn't going to say it. I didn't say you couldn't say it. But that there comes a point, and like I said, I think NASCAR has evolved greatly in working with these team owners and saying, okay, we want to help this sport survive. We want to work with you. The other issue I have here is we're talking about the money and the sponsorship. Xfinity is leaving as a brand sponsorship of the second tier team or series. And guess what? All of a sudden, they're on 23XI's team. So not only are they saying, okay, we want the money that we didn't agree to race for here, but we're going to take one of your primary sponsors that helps pay the entire sport and take it for ourselves only. They're hurting the sport, in my opinion.
Yeah. I was going to bring up Bill France Sr. too. It was, you went to the Red Hauler, and if you didn't agree with what they were doing, his famous line was, "You need us a whole lot more than we need you. So if you don't like it, there's the door." And that's the way it used to be done. And so, yeah, Bill France left, or not Bill France, Brian France left. Jim France came in, and it did kind of bring in a whole new era of a way of doing things. The RTA came in, they started talking about charters. People started listening to the drivers, to the team owners, and trying to make everybody happy. I think, and I said this in the early part when we first started talking about these lawsuits, I think Michael Jordan, you're right, has a different kind of background. I think he wants NASCAR to evolve much more quickly than they are able to evolve right now, this minute. And I think that, sometimes you open up Pandora's box, and that's what I see here. They said, we're going to take a new stance. It's no longer, you don't like it, there's the door, go. They said, we were going to sit down and talk and negotiate and try to work through these things with you, and make things happen that are going to be beneficial for NASCAR, but beneficial for the teams as well. And when they opened up Pandora's box, you're right about the RTA. I agree with you with the RTA. The RTA might not have, but where did the RTA go and why did it go? That's something that needs to be looked at here as well, because there's a reason that happened as well. And so it disbanded, and so each of the teams went to NASCAR, and they did group meetings with a lot of these teams. They were going nowhere with the group meetings. And so that's why they went to talking to people individually and trying to work things out with individual teams. And they are absolutely correct when they say it's better than what they've ever had before. This is by no means nothing that's happening at NASCAR. It is much better than what they have ever had before. And again, I will restate this. When you negotiate, both parties leave the table not getting everything they want. Both parties get some of what they want, and they get some of what they don't get, some of what they wanted. So that's what a negotiation process is, that you compromise, you come up with an agreement that is a compromise on both sides. And I know NASCAR said, permanent charters are a no-go, and there's a reason for why that's a no-go. I agree with that decision. They should be negotiated on a periodic basis because the environment changes. There are many changes that happen along the way, and so something new needs to be discussed. You can't say that we're not going to discuss the charter agreements. And I think we're headed for a conundrum because NASCAR's already said that if they don't win in the end, charters are going to go away. And so now where are we? We're back to where it was. And I don't think that's going to be good either. I think there has been some positives that have come out of the charters. So I do think that the charters need to be here. So they're again, this is an example of two sides not understanding really the negotiation process, I think. And I know that they feel that there are some issues here. And I got to say, maybe, just maybe, and it's hard to say this when you're talking about Curtis Polk and Michael Jordan, but the way that they're going about business is not going about business the correct way either, with the accusations that NASCAR is making in their countersuit. Right. So I really think that they need to work on their negotiation skills, because you can't come to the table saying, we got to have this, and if we don't get this, we're going to cause trouble. That's not the way to negotiate with people when you're sitting at the table. You find common ground and you work on the common ground when you're in the negotiation process. And from what I'm seeing in the lawsuits that have been filed, because I've read them, and from what I'm seeing, from what I'm hearing, it sounds to me like there's some negotiation skills that are lacking. So and that's hard for me to say. I'm a Michael Jordan fan. I watched the Bulls through their dynasty years. So I'm a Michael Jordan fan, but I don't really particularly agree with what's happening in this situation. So you get some say so here, Chris.
Well, this is Jim Francis, Curtis Turner, right? This is, like you mentioned before, Big Bill had issues with Curtis Turner. They were trying to get the drivers together to form a union. That's not the way that NASCAR was going to work, but I'm not sure if the old way still works today. And sure. We just recently seen where High Limit Racing has come out where they've decided to scratch the charters and create a franchise system. And we know that is really what 2311 is trying to gain here. They're trying to gain a specific knowledge that they will have control of their organization into the future. It's all about money. And people say, well, you don't make money in racing. That's right. And that's why it's a consistent failure in racing. That's why we have the turnover rate that we have, because you can't make money in racing. And let me tell you something, even if you could make money, somebody will still try to outspend you. We know the name of the game. We've seen it forever. Formula One does a really good job at putting a salary cap. And I think that in a franchise situation, that would definitely be something that's brought to the table, a salary cap for these teams. That way they can only spend a certain amount of money. But I also believe that NASCAR has already tidied up all this by becoming a private company, right? There was a time where they were an open company. The SMI was open. Then all of a sudden they closed the doors. They bought everybody's stocks and shares, and they put it all into one. Well, it wasn't just, 3 months ago we heard NASCAR say, well, hey, we're kind of thinking about maybe selling part of it. Who do you think they're talking to? You think they're talking to Elon Musk to buy into NASCAR? No, they're talking about the owners of the teams maybe having some kind of market sharing or buying into NASCAR. I believe that wholeheartedly, and we just seen that. That was my opinion 6 weeks ago. So then to see High Limit all of a sudden offer this franchise situation, it's almost like, hey, maybe Kyle Larson was just feeding off of what they're hearing from that side of the podium, and decided to go ahead and implement that to see if it works in high limit racing. I know this is a strictly a NASCAR show, so I don't know if y'all have formulated an opinion. I'm still trying to pick up the pieces of what it means to have a franchise in racing, right? Because honestly, the franchise was supposed to be the organization, right? NASCAR itself is the franchise of racing, and you have these other forms of racing that are there. But the geographic is changing. It's changing at our local tracks. Local tracks are. You would think streaming money and stuff would be going into local tracks. A lot of the streaming money is going into series, and then the series is having to maybe fork over a little bit. So everything that we think is how business should be ran, unfortunately, racing says, nope, we're going to do it this way. And that's where we are with 2311 and with NASCAR. Front row, they're the ones that stand the most to lose, right? I mean, like those guys were the Jerry Maguire scene where who's coming with me, They probably should have just stayed there and not walked out with 2311, because if this comes to burn, we're going to lose two great organizations in Front Row Motorsports. They are the success story of NASCAR. They are the team that rode around when Start and Parks had drivers like Kevin Conway.
Excuse me, they're the success story of the charter system.
Well, true, but they, without them starting, I think they showed up the first time in 2009, 2010 with John Andretti as their driver, right? So yeah, they are perfect. But now you look at how many times they sold a charter and then bought a charter. I don't know. I could kind of argue there, Miss Sharon, because
that's okay.
It's like, why did you go pay $30 million for a charter when you sold one for $3 million? Or they won one in a court case, I think, with the closure of the 23.
Irvine.
Was it? The Ron Levine, or was that his
Levine?
name?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Dr. Pepper team is that I was referencing to. But yeah, so I mean, here we are. Two sides. Of course, there's a countersuit to almost every lawsuit. That's no big surprise. The question is still in the air: who's going to win it? And I do believe, Michael, there was a little bit more to that. That basically NASCAR wanted to control or have free reign to the Michael Jordan brand, which would be the Jumpman brand. And I think that maybe is what kind of really put things into a hold up. I'm not sure.
I haven't seen that in any of the
Well, it goes back to with Ross Chastain and the watermelon situation, where Ross Chastain, when he's first coming up, he had the Watermelon Association in Florida. Well, NASCAR contacts the Watermelon Association and tries to bring them on board so that they can sponsor a race. And I think that there's some kind of clause where when you become a sponsor in NASCAR pretty much, they have free reign to use your logo as they please. And I'm not sure the exact, communication, the verbiage for all that. But I do believe that you become a NASCAR partner with a certain signature that says, yes, we're going to sponsor this team, but we're also a NASCAR partner as well. Robbie Gordon had some similar situation with the speed drink, that if I can go back and maybe bring a reference that could actually clarify what that is, because obviously Robbie Gordon had issues with signing his brand, his energy drink brand, over to NASCAR. That was a big fuss back 15 years ago.
I don't know, though, that comes into play unless you're becoming an official partner of NASCAR. If you are just sponsoring a team, that's between you and the team. NASCAR may have tried to get them to be a partner for NASCAR, and that I don't know. I'm with Sharon. I hadn't heard anything as far as that of the Air Jordan or Jordan brand. I'm sure NASCAR maybe did ask or look into it, because any brand that or any sponsorship they can get that helps the sport obviously is a good thing. I know when you look at Monster Energy, they shifted away from the overall NASCAR sponsorship to a team, as we saw with Xfinity. And that's why I said, that's happened before in the past. Either they've changed how they want to spend their money or what they think they're getting value-wise, whatever. And that's on them. But for the team to say, NASCAR, you owe us more money and we want more from you, but then also to take with the other hand. And Chris, you brought something up that I thought was ironic too. Of again, they said, "Hey, we don't like the charter system, but we want to get paid as charter. Plus, we want to buy a third charter. We don't even think the charter system's good, but we want to buy a third charter," which was another separate lawsuit with Stuart Haas. You talked about Stuart Haas going under. 2311 was one of those that wanted one of those charters. And NASCAR said, "No, you're fighting against us and suing us. We're not going to give you another one on top of that." And they won that lawsuit and an injunction or temporary. Again, I don't think this is good for the sport. Honestly, it's really not. And I see it as possibly the downfall of the charter system as a whole. There are aspects I don't care for it. Chris, you'll relate to this. I'm not a big fan of guaranteed spots when it comes to locking somebody in. And you and I have talked about this when it comes to the Street Stock Nationals series races, whatever series it is. I'm not a big fan of somebody getting a guaranteed spot. You race your way in. If you don't make it, try again next week. You still got a shot at the overall championship, but you got to race your way in and race harder the next week. But I do see value in it, as we saw with Chip Ganassi Racing. When he decided to get out of NASCAR, he had something of value to sell, not just some parts and pieces that are outdated, so you can't get but 10 cents on the dollar. So I see value in it. But there too, it's gotten so out of control. Some of these teams didn't pay for a charter or paid $3 million and then ended up selling it for $40 million. The teams that come in and just outspend the other. I don't have that answer. That's one of those. I don't know how you can put a salary cap on a team with that, but I'm not a fan of who can outspend who, not necessarily who can outrace who. And that's what it's become. Unfortunately, I understand it's a business and things are evolving. But I think that we need to go back to who can outrace who and not who can outspend who, or who can get the better lawyer, I guess, in this case.
Right.
Yeah. Lawsuits are never good for any business, and it certainly isn't going to be the case here. It is going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. I will say we are not attorneys. We are not insiders. We don't have inside information. We are going by what we read in the lawsuits. We're going by what is being published. And some of what's being published, I have to say, is positioning by this side and positioning by this side. So, you know, when anybody is looking at this, you have to take all of that into consideration. There's a lot of positioning that's taking place, and some of it is, you know, slick stuff that goes on, and some of it is up and up stuff that goes on. So, you know, we have to wait and see how it all plays out. And I hope it plays out quickly. Now, May 9th is when they're going to be heard. Both sides will be heard. That's not when a decision is going to be made, but both sides will have the opportunity to be heard by the judge, and then the judge will review everything and make his decision, and that is yet to be determined on when that happens. But let's just hold tight and see what happens. Anything more you have to say there, Chris?
No, I think we covered it.
Okay. I want to kind of, maybe this is a little bit lighter subject, I'm not sure, but I was amazed at how many issues there were on pit road. You had Ty Gibbs totally turned around. You had rims coming off of the wheels. You had Christopher Bell going into 2 different pit stalls to get a tire taken care of. What's happening? Why are there so many at this particular track? So, Jay, is it your turn to go first? No, I think it's your turn to go first, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, we're at Vegas, baby. You know, all odds are against you, right? You're going in. Very rarely does the house lose. And so I think the pressure's on for these guys. This is really like race week number 2, considering where we've come from the first 3 races, Atlanta, Daytona, and COTA. So the pressure's on for these guys. It's time to get into the stretch, and the mistakes are made throughout the year. Very rarely do we see this type of activity going on at a Las Vegas race. I think that it played into how Josh Berry won, right? I mean, Josh Berry himself had issues, and all the cautions. I think Chase Briscoe made up 4 laps. He was 4 laps down at one point in time. So all these cautions just kind of created different strategies, right? And we got to see kind of a different style Las Vegas race because there was more action going on, more mistakes being made, wrecks that typically we haven't seen much of over the past at mile and a half speedway. So, all these things factored in and gave us a different style race. If you look at who was running where midway through the race, it was Larson, Reddick, and Byron, and the usual suspects up at the top. But then somewhere about lap 20 to go, you look at the scorecard and it's a little bit different. You got Priest up there, you've got Suarez, or you got Berry. So different characters were put into the factor because of how strategies went with all the cautions and stuff. Like Larry Mack said in the race with 25 to go, he's like, "Look, I have no notes because typically 25 to go is our last caution." So we got a different side of Las Vegas. I think it was entertaining. I feel like we've been riding a high. Like Phoenix was great. Like, whoa, Phoenix was a good race. COTA's been, other than the rain year, oh my gosh, can you even tell me the past winners there? Atlanta has been fire as hell. And then Daytona, without a doubt, always puts on the best show of the year. So we're riding a really good streak right now in the Cup Series. And not just the Cup Series. I think Xfinity and trucks are doing well too. So, it goes down to strategies and the different action that's happened on the track that created the outcome. So I'm all for it. What about you guys?
Jay?
Yeah, I think Chris hit on something very specific. We are getting into Daytona is always its own separate entity. Atlanta now being the super speedway style is still kind of finding its footing. And then you get COTA, which is a road course. And we've seen, obviously, you have a wide range of road course racers. It's not like it used to be 1 or 2. The field gets a little more spread out. As we get into the meat of the season here, as he said, of people already in a little bit desperate situation and whatnot, but also the on track as the teams, and Sharon, you and I talked about this on my way home earlier, the parity and level of competition on the track amongst teams is so much tighter. And we're talking about even on the cars themselves, trying to find that 10th of a speed, or 10th of a mile an hour, a little half inch here of advantage. Well, they're finding that it's got to be on pit road, that you can make up huge on pit road. And then the position you're in out on the restarts, because the restarts are huge. So in order to get better position on the restart, you got to get a better position on pit road. And if that means, a half second less on that lug nut. I know that was a separate issue I had, was whether or not there was an issue with the tires that NASCAR maybe didn't need to look at, or if it is just these driver errors or crew errors and being too big a hurry. But I think that really is that's where pit road is where they're looking at now of how can we make up time on pit road, because that's where we can find the biggest and easiest advantage to get a jump on the competition and set ourselves up for restarts. I think it was last year, the year before, when Joe Gibbs Racing is the one that changed the way they set up for their pit stops and how they position their people to try and save time in running around the car. And everybody saw it and went, whoa, is that saving them time? I mean, is that 1 or 2 steps, or having 2 people here and 2 people here instead of all 4 around one side? They're looking at every little millisecond they can. And in doing so, I think they're getting a little too far ahead of themselves. And, we talk about evolution. And I don't know how far back it goes from what I recall was 15, 16 second pit stops to 8 second pit stops. And I know we got 1 lug nut versus 5, but even with that, without that, I mean, we were getting down there. It's getting faster and faster. We talked about the air guns and what they're trying to do when teams were building their own air guns and building the equipment to try and be faster with that. You know, they're looking for split second because that relates to feet and yards and on the track. So I think it's just a matter of them going a little too fast and making mistakes, and it's costing them. I mean, they talk about it every week. The team that wins isn't necessarily the fastest car anymore. It's who made the least mistakes or was able to overcome them.
Yes, indeed. And you're both of you guys are right. There is some kind of entertainment value there, but the way I kind of look at it, I look at it a little bit differently. I like to be entertained by the racing that's on the track. And this is the premier level of NASCAR. These are supposed to be the best of the best. And I just feel like the racing that we saw at Las Vegas was a lot of mistakes. And for all the reasons that Jay brought up, you know, it wasn't their time to shine, if you will. They were making mistakes on pit road. People were in a rush. They were bumping into each other and turning people around in their stalls. You know, they weren't getting the tires on, and that's been an ongoing problem. I think that needs to be looked at. Of that one lug nut, they only have one lug nut to worry about, and for some reason, we're not getting the one lug nut on. So I think NASCAR needs to look further into that. I just feel like it wasn't the best time for them to shine as the premier series in this sport. I feel like they need to, as Jay mentioned, take a minute and slow down and do it right, and let's be the best of the best in NASCAR's Cup Series. I thought that the other two races were much better as far as putting on a good show and being entertaining. I thought that they were actually better at their craft than what the Cup Series was at their craft. And a lot of people say, and you guys alluded to this, this is where the season really begins, because now we're at the 1.5 mile track, and there's 5 of them on the schedule this year. So yeah, this is where it all begins. And I know we had Christopher Bell trying to go after history with getting 4 consecutive wins, you know, and joining an elite group of people. That played into it for him. But all of these drivers are doing, or all of these teams, let me put it that way, are doing everything they can think of to be that elite team that makes it into the playoffs and wins that championship, because it means a great deal to an entire organization and all of the people that work in that organization. So I can't blame them for doing that. But I do feel like they weren't at their best at Las Vegas Motor Speedway this weekend. And I know maybe it's just getting the jitters out of the way, and maybe we move on from there and somebody sits down with them and has that conversation of, we need to slow down to go faster. Because we're going too fast and we're making ourselves not look good. So slow down a little bit, do it right, and let's put on a good show on the track. So that's just the way I was looking at it. But what do you have to say in follow up, Chris?
I'm in the business of storylines. It would be boring if we had a typical Las Vegas race. And I know that those races are coming, right? That's just, it's going to happen. And we're going to struggle to have something to talk about the following week. What I've noticed over the last 2 years, really since COVID, like the NFL, we've literally had storylines every week. And next week's storyline may not even be anything like this week's storyline. Unfortunately, this week, it's the pit crews and the failures on pit road. They were in Las Vegas. We were in Las Vegas to because it's supposed to be warm there. It was not warm; it was cold. So there's one factor, like those guys were caught off guard with. They were expecting a warm vacation.
True.
They got cold weather. So it's the elements. It's the West Coast swing. Some of these guys had not come home. They, the pit crew guys, of course, the drivers fly home in their Lear jets, but the pit crews a lot of times are left to stay out there, and so they're living out of a bus or a camper or something to that effect, or even hotel rooms. And so these factors do happen. As I said, I'm in it for the storylines. This week, the storyline happens to be pit crews made a lot of mistakes. I'm tired of seeing the tires come off, like you, Sharon. I think that these guys should do it a little bit better. If the single lug nut is the issue and it's going to create a major problem, my biggest fear is this tire getting loose and causing something really bad to happen. Yes. Whether it's a windshield impact or whether it goes up into the stands. Yeah, an official getting hurt. Something. We are playing with fire with these tires coming off. When you seen that rim, and we laughed and joked because the tire and the rim literally did this number. They crossed each other's path. And I was like, what if that rim had gone back into the tire, right? Like, that would have been the coolest thing we ever seen. But, yeah.
It's not funny, but I hear you.
But, I mean, that's where we're at now. So we got to have this problem fixed. It's similar to the flat tire issue where the cars can't go. We've got to figure out, NASCAR's got to figure out how to keep these tires on the car. And until we figure this out, it's going to continue to be a hot topic.
Jay.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. And that was one that, like I said, we did seem to see a lot of the tire issues this weekend. I don't know if it is a problem that there is a part issue that something isn't working like it should, or if it is just the speed at which these teams are doing it. The one thing I think when it comes down to it, I hate to say it this way, but it'll work itself out. As these top teams go, like, oh, we're a better team and a faster team, we'll get the Christopher Bell. And I'm not saying that's the way he's looking at it. We can make mistakes because we got 3 wins in the bank, but they do have that security net. For some of these teams, though, we'll get a win later in the season. How did that work out for some of the teams last year that didn't get a win, such as Kyle Busch? Unfortunately, everybody's thought, oh, he'll eventually get a win. And we've seen that from other drivers and teams. As that happens, and you have teams such as the Wood Brothers and Josh Berry that, as Chris said, it's not that they didn't make mistakes, but they minimized them and put themselves in position. As more teams capitalize on that, you start looking at, hey, the spots in the playoffs are filling up and we're not in yet, or we're not at the top, or we don't have the bonus points that we should because we've made these mistakes. They're going to clean them up. The one thing I found funny, Sharon, you talked about being at the top level from the Xfinity Series. Austin Hill was talking about it and saying, oh, it's early in the season, we can make mistakes now. Be like, don't bank on that, because you're banking on, seriously, oh, it'll get better and, we'll be okay at the end of the year. Just don't do it in the playoffs. Well, what happens at the end of the year? You're going to do the same thing you've been practicing and doing all year. You better be not making mistakes now. So it's a natural to not make mistakes come the playoffs when the pressure amps up even more. So I think you should have more of a focus on, hey, not making mistakes now when there is no pressure, so that, we're in a routine come playoff time or through the grind of the season.
Muscle memory, right? Your muscle remembers your actions. And so if you're making mistakes, that's what they're going to remember down the road. Yeah, I think you made some really good points, Chris, with regard to all the reasons for why there might have been mistakes on pit road, the fatigue of going to the West Coast, the weather. I think that was a big factor. It was, when I heard that there was a rain delay in Las Vegas for the Truck Series, or was it the Truck Series, the Xfinity Series? I was like, what? In Las Vegas, a weather delay? I couldn't believe my ears. So, yeah. So I don't think anybody was expecting that. So people probably weren't prepared for that. And so, yeah, I can see where all of those were factors that played into it. And I do feel like they will clean up their act, as you put it, Jay, and things will get better, because I don't think anybody enjoyed the fact that they were making all those mistakes on pit road. I think they were probably pretty upset about it, and they want to do better. So I don't expect this to be an ongoing thing, but I will say it again. The tires have been an ongoing thing, and that needs to get fixed. They need to slow down, or NASCAR needs to look at if there's a problem with the guns or what is going on that's causing all of these tires. Now, I will say tire pressure is something that I know they do play around with. They get a recommended PSI every week from Goodyear, and everybody knows you get better traction if you push it a little bit further on the tire pressure, and they run on a little bit flatter tire, and they end up getting flats. So I don't know if NASCAR needs to prohibit that if they find that the PSI has been played around with in that regard. But these flat tires need to be addressed too, because I do think it's from them playing around with the PSI and going beyond the recommended limit. Right now, it's a recommended limit. It's not a mandatory limit. I'm wondering if it shouldn't become a mandatory limit. And I know that they're being so boxed in so many ways. You hate to take that away from them, but we don't need all these flat tires that are blowing out the way they're blowing out either.
Yeah, I think that, the penalty doesn't necessarily fit the crime. We've put these guys in a box that they cannot win. They're under so much pressure. This is the one sport where you don't want a mid-season 2-week vacation. And the reason why they don't want a 2-week vacation is because for 2 weeks, somebody else is doing their job. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the year, they may not be there anymore. They make 2 mistakes in 1 year. Are you coming back to the top affiliated team? No, you're going back down to another team. So just that pressure alone, you think about a driver, he has to right hook somebody and put him in the wall. He may get suspended for 1 race. You got a crew chief who may do something to a car, manipulate a car. He could get suspended for 2 or 3 races. But you've got a guy every week. All he's got to do is miss that cue, miss that broom, and the tire comes off, and he's lost his job for 2 weeks. That is an embarrassing. It's got to be a walk of shame when you show up at the shop on Monday morning, knowing that you're the next guy out. Like you're going home for 2 weeks, and they can't utilize you for anything. I think that in itself is a whole lot of pressure on these guys. It's maybe not it's not deserving. It's maybe too much pressure for these guys. Maybe the penalty doesn't necessarily fit the crime. I don't know if that's a box we open up here tonight, but I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, I don't know. But NASCAR, that's the one option they do have to try and dissuade it is to suspend the crew members and make it be a penalty that hurts, not just for 1 race, but for multiple, so they can say, okay, well, we were behind in that race anyway. What does it matter? Because it also affects them the next week. It affects the rhythm of the team the next week when they have to replace a crew member. So I understand where NASCAR is coming from and that's their answer and trying to address it long term. Is it necessarily the right way? I don't know. And I wouldn't have the answer as to how to go about it then either, though. So the one thing, and I don't know if it is, Sharon, you made a point of, I don't know if the lower tire pressure is that they're not sitting on there right when they first start out, and that might be what's causing it. I really don't know. I know I've seen Larry McReynolds in their Ford Cutaway car when they do the demo of how that lug nut goes on. Again, I'm not a fan of the one lug nut, and I haven't been since it came in. And I understand it's one of those. I didn't get to negotiate, but it's what NASCAR decided. I either had to accept it or quit watching racing. I'm not going to leave and not watch. But no, I'm not a fan of it for a couple of reasons. And that was my concern, though, was with 5, if there was 1 loose or even 2, because a lot of times 3 would still hold, that if you miss one, I mean, that's it. You got one shot, so if it's not on, you lose it. That was the fear I had. And I wouldn't say, I know Dave Moody on SiriusXM had the numbers of, if you look at 40 cars, I know we don't have 40, that's just the round number they use, but 36, 4 tires per team. They make X number of pit stops over one race, over how many races a year. The numbers we're losing aren't really all that great when you look at it percentage-wise. Now, you come into the safety issue, and somebody today brought it to an extreme. Chris, you mentioned it, of what's it going to take for one to get away and cause some problems. I'll just leave it at that. This caller went a lot more extreme, but it's possible. We get that, and they are, I'm sure, going to look at it as far as a safety reason. That's why they have the penalties they do of a 2-lap in race as well as suspensions when it comes to that if you lose it on the track. So do they need to amp that up even more? Maybe so. And I don't know. It did seem like there was more at Vegas than we've seen. Like I said, I can't put my finger on exactly why. Chris, you brought some excellent points as to the weather and being the West Coast, the travel, the jet lag for some of them, if you will. Could be a variety of things. We'll have to see if it becomes something a long-term throughout the season. But I really think it is just that pressure. Like I said, right now, that's where the focus is of, hey, we can make up some serious ground on pit road. And that's where they're kind of putting that focus.
8.6 seconds. A pit stop was 8.6 seconds.
Isn't that crazy?
It's wild.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, I was going to say something, and now I've kind of distracted myself, and I forgot what I was going to say. So, Jay, do you want to pick the next? Do we have time for another hot topic, or do you guys need to go?
I'm good.
No, I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay, Jay, you want to pick the next hot topic then?
Okay. This for Sharon, you and I, this will kind of be a rehash. When they were talking about it at Phoenix Raceway, and we've seen it at a couple other tracks of having 2 tires, the yellow labeled prime tire, and then an option or softer red tire. They were talking about that. They did it again at Phoenix and what they were going to do come championship race. And I had a certain opinion, and like I said, I've kind of been swayed on this. But they had a test session. Yeah, Sharon's excited to see why I changed my mind. Be like, who changed Jay's mind? I've been trying to change his mind for 5 years now. But they did a test, and they said the goal is to go to 1 tire. It will be a softer compound like the option tire would be, but it would be 1 tire for everybody to use for the entire race. So I'm going to let y'all go in first round here, and I'll come back as to why I think my thought process has changed.
I guess it's my turn to go first now, isn't it? Well, for the championship race, I think it should maybe be 1 tire. That's my top of the head thought on that. Because these guys have raced all season long to be in that Final 4. And I know it adds an element of strategy to the game, but they're not racing the entire season on 2 tire options. So I think they should have 1 tire for Phoenix. And I think that the softer tire is the way to go. The drivers, the pit crews, everybody said that they want that softer tire option so that they can make the decisions about how their team manages that softer tire. I think they like having that part of the racing in their hands. They have so little outside of their hands now. Let's give them that. Let's give them the softer tire and let them have that decision in their hands. I know the 2 tire option would give them decisions as well, but and they'd have to manage the harder tire against the softer tire. But I say for the championship race, we need to give them 1 tire. That's just my off the top of my head thinking, but I'm curious to hear what everybody else thinks on that. Chris?
Data, right? That's exactly what we're getting right now. With 2 tires, we're getting 2 different sets of data. That's that much quicker that Goodyear can get together and get that one tire that we need. That, tires. I'm tired of talking about tires. And I know everybody else is, right? So because we know that they come with a really stiff tire, and it was because they didn't want to drop the ball. Well, now they've been given the opportunity, and NASCAR's allowed the opportunity to run 2 different types of tires. So we're actually in live time getting data, right? We're seeing what a little now. We don't have to worry about a brickyard situation where you show up with 1 tire and it's completely garbage and you're having to throw a caution every 15 laps, right? So at least we're eliminating that factor from happening. I think we did have this happen at Bristol or something, a couple of years ago, right? Where the tire was just atrocious, right? It just come apart. And so now when we go into these smaller racetracks, I think they got it pretty much figured out. Look, racing's better at the 1.5 miles since this new car than what it was for 10 years previous. 1.5 mile speedways literally were the worst thing in the world until this new car. So what we got with the new car was better racing at 1.5 mile speedways, a better competitive racing. We don't need an extra tire for Las Vegas. We don't need an extra tire for Charlotte. Where we do need an extra tire is short track racing. That's the part that fell off in this change to the new car. And you add that option at Martinsville, and you add that option right now at Richmond. You had that option at Phoenix. We'll get to the tire that we specifically need quicker by doing what we're doing right now, by doubling up. I do not want a tire war. I don't want Hoosier getting back in, and I don't want NASCAR putting these guys in a situation where they show up with a too soft of a tire and you hit the wall at a 1.5 mile speedway wide open, and we lose another Kurt Busch, or we lose, an Alex Bowman for the year, or similar situation where a guy gets hurt. So I mean, look, they're going to get it together. Goodyear's a big company, and I did hear, I believe it was on maybe this morning with Larry Mack and Danielle Trotta, that this is as far as Goodyear can go with this tire. Like, they cannot go any further. This is as soft of a tire as they can get. The tire that was practiced at Martinsville and I think used this past weekend at Phoenix, so it can't get any softer than that. And if that's to the point to where I think you just can't go any lower without it actually damaging. I heard something, and I believe it was on Door Bumper Care, like 40% of the tires that they manufacture for this certain thread doesn't actually make the grade. So they're basically having to waste 40% of those tires. Go back to Door Bumper Clear, and it's more specified there on the reason why it's so hard to make this softer tire. It has to fit a certain component, and it's just that hard to make. So somewhere or another, we will get a better tire. And I think that the fastest way to do it is by putting 2 tires out there and seeing which one, what data is collected off of each of these tires. Basketball's tried a new ball one time. Baseball has, they've tried new baseballs before. We got put with a whole new car that had a new tire. Goodyear had to start from scratch. This is just a quicker way to catch up. Mike, Jay.
Yeah. Well, first off, Chris, I can't believe you brought up the Indianapolis. That one was, I would use the word disaster. Yeah. I was there the year before. I was so happy. I was at Indy the year before. The Bristol deal, that was one of those where Goodyear had gone towards a softer tire. But again, weather or something, I don't know if they ever did figure out the anomaly there, that they couldn't even reduplicate. They tried to figure out what caused that and couldn't. But it did give a good thing. Yeah. Well, but from it, that was where they said, okay, we can work with it. And they tried to reduplicate it and started working in that direction. So they learned from it, at least that. Now, here's the thing. We talked about it at Phoenix. It was a good thing. You have that strategy, especially if towards the end, the team's got 2 sets left versus 1. It adds intrigue. And that's where Chocolate Myers weighed in. He said, oh, that's great because you got strategy. However, the counterpoint was, and I hate to use somebody's name, but in that race, it was Ryan Preece. He was a 25th, 26th place car, put on the red tires, drove up to 4th. if he
Right up
finishes there, right, okay, did he really run there, or did he have that tire at the right time in the right circumstances and came home third with a 25th place car? Occasionally that's okay. That's where it comes down to then championship weekend. Do we want to see that? And I think about the fan outlash with that, because I was with that. I like that strategy that gives them options. Do you pull it too early and you've used up one set? Because you certainly don't want to have both sets laying there at the end of the race going, hey, we never used them, bad on us. We could have done something that didn't. I like that. However, when you talk about the championship, Sharon, this is where you said it's about the 4 teams and who outraces who. We want the 4 best going at it, wheel to wheel. I think about the lashback that Joey Logano got, having supposedly not been in the playoffs, got to be back in and winning it, and how everybody was outraged about that. If you have, and obviously you can't say a 25th place team because there's only 4 when it comes down to it, but if you're the 4th driver running in the 25th position, all of a sudden get the chance and get those tires on and win the championship because of that, yeah, people aren't going to be happy. So I do think for the championship race, it certainly does need to be 1 tire. Do I like races throughout the year that have this option set? I do. And Chris, you brought up a great thing. Throughout the year, get your data points so that when you do 1 tire for championship weekend, you got the best tire available based on all the data.
That's right.
And I also look at it, though, if you get that softer tire and 1 tire, it is still a strategy, because then it is how kind of tire pressure do you use, what kind of camber do you use, how hard do you allow your driver, tell your driver to push. And that's what we saw at Bristol. They knew it was a soft tire. Can you manage your tires? And that is a huge thing, especially when it comes to, I'm going to get a thumbs up here from Chris, your dirt track drivers seem to manage tires better. Your short track racers seem to manage tires better. So there's still a lot of strategy and things that'll come into play even with the 1 tire. So I definitely do think that for championship weekend, it's 1 tire under that softer compound, so that there is some strategy and flexibility, but it's not a matter of, if you had the right ones on at the right time, you may not have been the best car, but won the race.
Go to Hickory or go to Five Flags, and you'll be calling Harry Hyde before the end of the session, because Harry Hyde's going to show you may be fast originally, but until you learn how to conserve those tires, you're just going to put it in the wall.
There you go.
That's right. You guys actually made all the points that needed to be made to kind of support what I said of having that race with the softer tires, because we're learning now which softer tire is the one they want to bring to the championship race. Right. So I like it. I really don't have a lot to add to that, because I think you guys made all the points. Chris?
Yeah, no. Like I believe I've said what I feel is, it's data. Yep. We're going to get to the tire that we need when it comes to the 10 race championship. I don't want any shenanigans. I just want straight up a good tire that Goodyear and NASCAR feel is appropriate for these races. You don't want a situation where running into Phoenix at 10 laps ago, somebody's sitting there with a faster tire and they're running 10th. I know it seems like a great idea, but as we've seen from Priest, he's running really good, and I don't know whether or not that's a fluke or not. It's great that you brought that up, Jay, because he did go from like back of the pack to front with no problem at all. But then when they all circled back and every single one of most of the teams were on that tire, we didn't see a guy moving up the field so fast. So, if NASCAR was still in this situation, they had to limit it. I hope that they would limit to when and how those tires could be used, and basically take them off the grid with 25 to go, because you don't, or make it scuffs only. I don't know, but I hope we don't get into Phoenix with the 2-tire challenge. We're not Formula One. You just don't see that in any other. I've got a bunch of street stock guys that sure wish they could race a different tire than H500. Nothing against Hoosier, but You know, I mean, it's just what it is. You know, it's a tough tire. It's a harder tire. These guys want softer tires, but you know, if Goodyear can put it together and it can be a safe tire, then let's do it, because what we want to see is tire fall off. What makes short track racing great, what makes the Fall Classic great, is that these guys have tire fall off. They have to manage tires, and in this age of stage racing and 8.6 second pit stops, you know, we need a tire strategy added to that, but just not a whole nother tire to choose from.
Jay?
And I'll give the shout out again, Chris. I know you'll like this. I said that's one of the things, Mr. Excitement, Spencer Hughes, he'll run 10th to 12th, you know, throughout 80 laps of a 100-lap race, and that last 20 laps, all of a sudden, you know, where did he come from? That's why he has managed his tires. It's not that he got a new set or you know, a different tire than everybody else. He just managed it. So throughout the season, I'm okay with him doing that occasionally here for multiple reasons. And the biggest thing, like Chris said, was getting that data. You know, when we think about somebody winning a race based on fuel mileage, I don't want to see it every week, but occasionally it works and it gives you somebody new in the playoffs or whatever. Same with a range shortened race. Yeah, you know, they didn't necessarily maybe have the best car. They pulled the right strategy and stayed out or whatever. But I don't want to see that determine our champion. So, yeah, I was kind of 2 tires during the championship weekend might be okay. It'll add that excitement. Like I said, I've been swayed. I definitely think for the championship weekend, like you said, maybe even the whole set of playoffs or at least the final round or so, definitely going with 1 tire. It being that good quality soft tire that has the drop off so that teams do have to manage it and work with it. But it's not that you can just pull one out when nobody else has one left and blow their doors off.
What's better than 2 tires? 3 tires, baby. Let's bring the rain tires too, right? That's where all this started from.
Bring the rain tires too, in case it rains out in Phoenix.
3 sets
right,
of tires.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, we know it's rained in Las Vegas, so there's a chance it'll rain in Phoenix too. It's just that kind of year. We're hearing snowstorms on the way. Here in Illinois.
Right.
I'm not ready for that.
Another system coming in.
Another system coming through. But anyway, I have really enjoyed Hot Topic Sound Off tonight. And Chris, if you're looking for a new home, I think this was one of our best Hot Topics yet. And we'd love to have you come back for Hot Topics if you're up for it.
Well, I mean, I invested into a new computer and a microphone and all that to go this route, and it just hasn't taken off. So I may have to take you guys up on that offer. I've enjoyed it as well. I like working with this guy right here. I've known Jay since he showed up to a racetrack and nobody knew who he was. But I was like, hey, man, come on in here. Maybe you'll learn something. And we've been pretty good partners ever since.
Well, I didn't even know who I was at that point, honestly.
But the one thing you can say is I had an open arm for you. That's for sure.
Oh, no doubt.
That's something hard to find in this business. So, Sharon, I appreciate your kindness as well. That's how you get people involved in the sport.
Yes, indeed. And tell us what you do at Why Not Motorsports Park, because you're Jay's mentor.
Well, I'm getting ready for my 13th season as a broadcaster, as an announcer there. It started out as a PA announcer job, but I remember in my first couple of years, I was calling the races, and my mentors were saying, Chris, what are you doing? Nobody can hear you. And I was like, look, man, one day there's going to be cameras out here filming, and here we are in the streaming age. 14 years later, 13 years later. And I'm glad that I was using that time to make all those mistakes when nobody could hear me, because now a lot of people can hear me. And, we have a lot of races that are live streamed at Why Not Motorsports Park. And so, I would like to say I'm just an old PA announcer who tells everybody when to get in staging lanes. But in reality, it's so much more of a job now. And Michael, you showed up with a video camera and a microphone, and, people dug that, and they, I have to give it to you. We're where we're at today because of entrepreneurs such as you that said, hey, I'm going to make this experience a little bit better. This guy showed up with an iPhone and a microphone, and would stand out on the deck and basically, call a race over my PA, not over my PA. I'm announcing to the crowd, and this guy's announcing to people on Facebook. And but now here we are. So now we're all on Facebook and streaming services, and kudos to you, Jay, as I've watched you grow in the sport. And I guess you're returning to Jackson Motor Speedway again this year, or you already have, right?
Yeah, we kicked off our season. We got 1 week in. They got rained out last week, and I wasn't available anyway, but they got rained out. I know you guys did as well. But yeah, I'll be back there at Jackson Motor Speedway. And as you mentioned, one thing leads to another, and I do. You're 100% right. There's some people you go to and don't want to help you for whatever reason. I won't get into that, but you were not one of them. You certainly welcomed me in, showed me everything you could, and how to go about things and help me along the way. The funny thing is, at the time of when I was doing that with just the cell phone, and I was just like, I'm here, I'm bored, or not bored, but looking to add to it and do something fun, which I enjoy. I don't know if y'all know that. I enjoy talking.
Really?
Yeah. But there were a lot of people that were against it until it became the thing to do, and then everybody was all for it. And I was like, "Hey, man, y'all hated me when I was doing it. What the heck?" But
a lot of those people are not in the sport anymore, if you notice that.
Well, that's true too. That's true too. But I really did. I started because, like I said, I was just having a good time and showing people what I enjoyed about the sport. I talk about, and Chris, this was right as I got to know you. When I got out of the military and didn't know what I was going to do, I'm always at the races in the pit area. I was like, might as well record and talk to some drivers and just be goofy. Albert Rich, who was a series director for a series in Tennessee, saw me here in Columbus and said, "Hey, we got some drivers from Tennessee. Will you interview them?" I said, "Sure." He said, "Hey, you did a good job. Will you come up and do some for us this next week in Tennessee?" I was like, "Sure." Within 3.5 years, I was running that series with him, and I was like, I still don't even know what happened. I was just being goofy out in the pit area, having some fun, and all of a sudden I'm running his series. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right. One opportunity led to the next.
Yeah.
Yep. And then I got to meet Sharon, and yeah.
I'm the one here who doesn't have experience with broadcasting, but
I don't know. You've been around a long time, Miss Sharon.
Well, I have been around for a while. That is true.
Yes, you have.
But professional experience.
Right.
I started because I ended up breaking my back and happened to go into an early retirement. And I'm thinking to myself, what the heck am I going to do with myself? And my son, just before all of that happened, is the one who introduced me to NASCAR. And so I started getting into NASCAR, and I thought, well, they had this official NASCAR members club. Maybe I'll see if I can become a chapter president and host some viewing parties. So I did that for a while. And then I started having strong opinions about things that were going on. And so I started a blog and to write some of my strong opinions about what was going on in racing. And then somebody invited me to be on their radio show. You remember Nick Ficcarelli? I don't know if you remember him.
Sure.
He invited me to be on his radio show and blog and everything. And so I did that for a while. And then I don't know, it seemed like I bounced around a little bit. And I finally said, well, why don't I just start my own radio network on Blog Talk Radio? I've got a website and I could do that. So I started my own radio show and started inviting people on my radio show. So it's funny how one thing leads to another and leads to another. And my kids to this day can't believe I do this.
Right.
And they and they say, but you choose to be busy. Yes, I do choose to be busy. I'd rather be busy than not busy. And this is what I came up with to keep myself busy with an early retirement because of a bad back. So it's funny how things happen, isn't it?
But you had like Jason Schultz, right?
Yeah, we had Jason Schultz on our show. He was 15 years old.
Right. I mean, this kid out of nowhere, right? And you've given all kinds of people opportunities. Sal, I remember Sal.
Yeah, Sal's still with us.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So
And it's funny about Jason because he contacted me and said he had an interest in being on our radio show, and I asked him how old he was. He said he was 15, and I said, well, I don't really feel comfortable doing that without a parent's permission. So he had me talk to his mom, and she gave me her permission for him to be on the show and everything. And I saw him at Chicagoland Speedway. He was working with Dale Jr. Download. He was working with Dale Jr. Show. And he came up to me and said who he was. And I said, oh my gosh, Jason, I can't believe it. Right. And, he's a success story for sure from what's happened at Fan4Racing Radio. Started with us when he was 15, had his own blog, and also wrote for us on Fan4Racing.com, and just continued to progress. And that was his dream, and he made his dream become a reality. So I give him a lot of kudos for that. We just gave him an avenue to be able to hone his skill. That's all we did.
That's right. Opportunities.
So
it was great being back here tonight. Like I said, it is quite the homecoming. I've been on a few times throughout the years, filling in and just popping in with you guys. And, I've sat around the last 4 or 5 weeks and hadn't really done anything, kind of moped around the house, no Blog Talk Radio Network to talk on. And out of nowhere, I get a message, and it was Miss Sharon saying, hey, why don't you come on and talk to us? It's been a while. So I was like, wow. I told my wife, I was like, that's crazy. Like, I guess it's time. So thank you for the invite back. Right. And I'll most definitely take you up on that offer.
It's not Heim time. It's Chris Crichton time.
The dirtiest voice in the South. And it's not because of the dirt either. It's we have to keep it PG.
Oh, right. Okay. Well,
let's tell how I really got that name, right?
I know nothing. I'm keeping my big mouth shut. Keeping my big mouth shut.
Woo, it's no telling how many phone calls Rodney had to hear in my beginning years. So I've learned to clean it up a little bit.
Well, and like I say, I've got grandkids watching this, so I like to keep it kid friendly. So thank you for your patience in that regard. But I think we better bring this to a close. I'm probably going to have to make some shorts out of this this radio show because we kind of had a good time here. But we will be back next Monday night, same time, same place. For Fan4Racing Radio. It will be episode 2505 that we will be doing for next week. But Hot Topic Sound Off here has a place on Monday nights at 9 o'clock Central. That's all of our times. But 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. I think we've got all bases covered there. And we hope more people will join in the conversation as we continue to evolve here at Fan4Racing Radio on YouTube, because we're on a learning curve, no doubt about that. But I think I'm going to try doing shorts with this one and see if that doesn't help us out a little bit. We kind of did our round the table thing already, I guess, so we don't need to do that. I think it's just a matter of me playing the outro, right?
All right. Well, I appreciate it, Sharon and Chris. It's always good to see you. I'm hoping to get down there to Why Not. Yeah. A lot of times we go against each other as far as at the track, but any opportunity I get, I'll be down there to see you, man.
Come on.
Chris, thanks for answering the call.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We do appreciate it. It's been a pleasure having you on, and hopefully you'll be back next Monday night with us too.
Sounds good.
Okay. Good night, everybody. We'll see you on the next video.
Bye.